Welcome back, basketball world, to another episode, a beautiful episode of the Spittin Hoops podcast. I'm here. I'm Max, my co-host Anthony. Anthony finally has a weight lifted off his shoulders. How you feeling?
Max, I've been better. We wanted to record this podcast yesterday. I asked you for a mental health day, and you very graciously were receptive to it. So thank you for that. I think the day off has been helpful, and I'm excited to be able to talk about NBA basketball without my fandom getting in the way of my objectivity now.
Yeah, of course. So if you don't know what we're talking about, Anthony, resident Celtics fan, as we remind the viewers every podcast. And the Celtics, unfortunately, lost Game 7 against the Miami Heat after coming back from a 3-0 deficit and evening out the series. They lose the Game 7, which raises a bunch of questions. But something that we do finally know is who's going to be in the NBA Finals. It's going to be the Miami Heat against the Denver Nuggets. So Anthony, we're actually just gonna, start with the game itself, and Game 6 as well. So in Game 6, Boston takes a really close game, winning 104-103 on Derek White tip-in. A little bit controversial stuff with time clock at the end, but to be honest, I feel like it kind of worked out in my opinion. Didn't see too much controversy there. But in Game 7, Miami really just took a 10-point lead in like the second quarter and never let it go. Eventually making the gap worse. Jason Tatum gets hurt at the beginning of the game in Game 7. But overall, Miami outmatches Boston completely, holding Boston to under 85 points. Anthony, opinions? I'll give you the floor now that we have that context.
Crazy Game 6. That was awesome. That was some of the wildest emotions I've had for a while. Like you said, I think there were enough calls that kind of went in all different directions that it definitely evened it out, and now it doesn't even matter. So who cares? But it's one of those plays that would have been remembered forever if they had won the series, and now it will be kind of etched into a cool little chapter book in the Celtics history, which I guess is nice. Fourth team ever to come back from 3-0. Still no team has ever come back from 3-0. So we'll see if that can happen anytime soon. Celtics, we just looked bad coming out of the gate. I mean, actually, we looked okay coming out of the gate, and then we looked terrible. I thought everybody was really tight, missing a lot of open threes. They just couldn't figure out the zone once again. It kind of felt like a repeat of games 2 and 3, to be honest with you, where Miami just had their pulse on the game the entire time. There were other games during the series. I'm thinking of games 4, and I think maybe Game 5. Game 4 for sure, where even though we were down, it felt like we were playing in a way where we could come back. A Celtics fan has been through this many, many times, and it was just clear. You got Jaylen Brown dribbling the ball into traffic every single time, turning the ball off his foot. Like, I don't know. Shannon Sharp called it dribbling like a middle schooler. I wouldn't go that far, but he had 8 turnovers. He was terrible. I think Caleb Martin proved to be the second best player for the Heat for sure, if not honestly for the series at the end of the day. Like, our guys just didn't show up. I don't know what we're missing. We'll talk about it over the summer, I suppose. I don't want to eulogize the Celtics too much, but very frustrated. It's the dual reality of seeing what the potential of a team can be. I still think that Boston was a more talented team and is a more talented team. And at the same time, I'm not surprised with the results. So what does that say? I'm not sure what it says. I don't know if genius is sticking with the same thing over and over and over and hoping that with time it'll persevere, or shaking things up. I don't know if I'm really ready to start that conversation, but it was definitely a frustrating game, Max. And I think it was the Highsmith steal and dunk at the end of in the middle of the fourth quarter to put them up 17, where I said, okay, all right, I'm good. I get it. I see. I felt it from the second quarter, but onwards, it was another Celtics lackluster game. It's tough to say that you don't want it, but even Jaylen Brown said himself, none of this matters if we go home and leg an egg, and he kind of spoke that into existence. So, but hats off to the Heat. It takes a really, really good team to be able to rattle us like we did. When we were facing the Sixers in Game 7, I felt much, much more confident because they themselves have their own issues. We were talking about the analogy of playing tennis, and sometimes you're playing against an opponent who loses because they hit the ball into the net or they hit it out. The Heat aren't doing that. They are forcing you to hit winners against them, and Celtics get tight and they can't hit winners. So what do you think?
Yeah, insane series. Just first of all, like as a basketball
Oh,
fan, obviously my Warriors are out. And now Anthony will join me as a as an unbiased basketball fan. But this series was just like an absolute treat to me. Between like games 6 and 7, and then games 2 and 3. I thought those were like the four best games of the series. I thought like games 4 and 5 were like a little weird. I kind of felt like the Celtics kind of handled the Heat pretty well, and the Heat, I wouldn't say they coasted, but it was like kind of like a talent differential for those games. But overall, I mean, this was a fascinating series basketball wise. Um, it was a choke by the Celtics to not complete it, but also, they put themselves in that spot. Like I thought the better team won, and it took 7 games, which, if Miami was going to win the series, is kind of what I would have expected. Um, yeah, a lot of questions about Boston. To be honest, between the coaching, I saw a report that a lot of the assistant coaches are going over to the Rockets, which is kind of crazy that they would want to go from the Celtics to the Rockets. But between that, the future of Jaylen Brown and his supermax, I think he gets the supermax, but kind of the clock starts now that Jaylen and Tatum both have like crazy deals. Like this is where you have no more room for excuses. Like I know Tatum's made 4 Eastern Conference Finals. Like I know they've been to a finals even last year, but at some point you got to figure it out. You have 2 of the top 15 guys, in our opinion, in the league. So it's like at some point, especially with all the talent that they have had, Horford has been great for years now. Marcus Smart has been fantastic, defensive player of the year last year. Rob Williams is a perfect playoff center. Even in game 7, you saw him play really well, even though he was sick. At times he was getting cooked by Jimmy, but other times he looked like fantastic, right? Yeah, weird season from the Celtics. It kind of felt like the vibes have been off for a long time, and it kind of feels like this was such a poetic ending to the season in a weird way. Like they almost made it happen, but they absolutely choked the game 7, and it kind of feels like it makes sense, to be honest.
Yeah. It does make sense in the words of every Celtics fan. At least there's next year.
Yeah, which you guys have been saying for a while, but
Yeah. Yeah.
hopefully you'll will get one soon. I do want to run through some stuff with the Heat. We have to talk about Caleb Martin, just unplayable in Game 7. An absolute masterclass. He had what, 27 in Game 7. It felt like he had 40. Like every shot that he hit, it would be like the Celtics score 6 straight, and it's like he hits a 3. It's like, dude, Caleb
Yep.
Martin, like, what are you on? Like, this is a guy, Caleb Martin, who's on a 2-way contract at the beginning of last season. And then they promoted him. He played well, and they gave him like a 3-year contract. I believe he's in the second year of a 3-year contract, and there's another year next year. But dude, imagine if he was on an expiring deal. I can't imagine what sort of money he'd get. Like just off a performance like that in this whole series. I mean, he averaged 20 a game this whole series. Like such an impressive performance. And in a game 7 where like the Celtics got clammy,
Oh yeah.
I said this on a previous podcast. Like the Heat have so many just like shot creators where they in a game 7, Jimmy's gonna play pretty well, and you just need 2 or 3 other guys to play well. And that's all you need. And the Celtics kind of need more cohesion, and they need a little bit more going on. And since the Heat really know their identity, they're like, okay, we need Jimmy and 4 other guys who can play well. And they found him. It was like Caleb Martin played well, Duncan Robinson gave him good minutes, and it's like Bam held up his end of the bargain. Kyle Lowry hit a few threes, and Jimmy Butler. That's your 5 guys. And they found their 5 guys in the game 7, and the Celtics couldn't find 2 guys who were playing well. Big shout out to Derek White. I've been a Derek. Oh, yeah, exactly. Derek, I thought Derek White literally looked like prime D Rose for like a half of the third quarter. I couldn't believe what I was watching. It was unbelievable. Big respect to him. I still kind of think he's overrated defensively. I didn't think he was this good offensively. This is incredible. Like, I would feel pretty comfortable shipping out Marcus Smart. Like to be honest, like I have Derek White who could just start anyways. So things like that. Things like that happen with the Celtics, which was interesting. But Derek White can't win you a game 7 if Tatum has 14 and Jalen has 8 turnovers. And it's like, if Tatum is going to get hurt in the first quarter of a game 7, can't have a Jaylen Brown game like that. Like, that just can't happen. Like, once Jaylen Brown was playing badly, I thought the game was over. I was kind of like, this is chalked. Haywood Highsmith, big shout out. Again, I agree. He sealed the game on that steal. I raved about him on the last podcast, and he got minutes and he played great. This was incredibly impressive. Gabe Vincent coming back from injury, incredible. And this was a basketball just out of body experience for me. Especially, I was rooting for Jimmy. I'm sorry, but this was an incredible series to me.
It was a wild series, man. It was a great series. I'm thinking now as you're talking, thinking about the guys that we have on our bench that we just didn't bother to play, like Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard, and even giving Grant some more minutes. And I'm just wondering why we didn't make those adjustments too. I mean, if the Heat can pull out these guys from the end of their bench and give them quality minutes, I mean, heck, even Zeller was giving them good minutes. Like, what are they doing?
If I can hop in here really quickly, I thought this was almost like whack. I texted you about this when this happened, actually. It's the beginning of the fourth quarter. The Celtics are down like 17, and then Joe Mazzulla throws in Sam Hauser. Dude, that is disrespectful to the starters who've been grinding all season, who, if you're gonna go down, you're gonna go down with the guys who've been getting the minutes. It's also disrespectful to Sam Hauser to be like, hey, I didn't trust you enough to play in a game 4, game 5, game 6, but here, game 7, 9 minutes left. I thought that was pretty ridiculous by Mazzulla. If I was a player, that would check the fuck out of me, to be honest. If you see Sam Hauser, this bench guy who has gotten, and he's good, you probably know he's good. You've seen him practice, like, but like, he's gonna get minutes out of nowhere, and like, the guys who've actually been performing are gonna ride the bench, and yeah, that I thought was weird. Maybe I'm reading too far into that, but I did not like that. I texted you the moment it happened too. I was like, you're not gonna play Sam Hauser for like 8 games, and like, then you're just you're gonna throw him in game 7. I thought that was like ridiculous, and like, I don't know. Brogdon also unplayable by the end of the series. I could not believe it.
Yeah,
He was,
He had he had the injury thing too, but I mean, he wasn't. They shouldn't have played him. It was tough. The whole team unraveled.
Yeah,
whole team unraveled. We had a mass meltdown, and it kind of went back into my monologue after game 3. It's the same story. It's everybody just kind of gets tight and anxious and nervous and is trying to avoid losing, and they beat themselves. And the worst part is they know this about themselves too. Like, nobody is confused about what the situation is in Boston anymore. Like, it's national media, it's in the locker room, everybody knows what it is. And that's the thing, is like, what can change to turn this around? Because everybody is a high IQ, great two-way player for the most part on this team, can make shots, except when everybody gets in each other's way. It's extremely frustrating. Again, like, we have a deeper bench than we utilized. We could have utilized these guys during the series when we were down and out, trying to figure it out. It's a long series for a reason. We come back and we don't do anything with the players that we have on the end of our bench that can make threes and hit shots. When, I mean, we have our worst 2 3-point shooting games back to back to close out the end of our season. Like, absolutely atrocious. And there's no randomness that this happened to happen right at the end of the series. We got scared, we got nervous, and we shot like it. That's what happens when you're shooting badly. It's because you're scared and you're nervous. So
and Jaylen Brown finishes the series 7 for 43 from 3.
Yeah.
So
it's great, man.
It's like,
I love it.
Yeah. Okay, we can move on. From there.
Thank you.
Sorry. We'll do a full. I feel like that was a pretty good eulogy.
That was good.
Overall, I think we both agree Tatum and Brown are on this team next year. Like, let's just
yeah.
I'm not tripping on that. So let's get into the NBA Finals. We previewed this a little bit previously, but now we have a little bit more games to go off of, and the context is a little bit different now that Miami's coming off of Game 7. Game 1 is tomorrow. It might be tonight whenever you guys are seeing this. And it's going to be in Denver. Miami goes to Denver. I think this is a fascinating series. I think the Nuggets are rightfully favored. They're minus 300 in sports books right now. But minus 300 to me is it's kind of crazy, in my opinion.
It's a pretty big number. I can't say I don't I don't hate it. I get it. I think the Heat obviously have a huge history now of upsetting all these teams, so definitely is going to be closer than what we're seeing. But yeah, I mean, off the rip, I'm gonna just say it. So I think the Nuggets are going to win in six. That's my initial take from this. I think that some of the differences between the teams that the Heat faced in the Eastern Conference, I'm thinking of the Bucks and the Celtics, the ones that on paper had more talent. In the Heat is that the Nuggets in-game execution is absolutely flawless. Like they're unbelievable. We
Mhm.
saw against the Lakers, they were just able to close out every single game, and it never really felt like they were out of it, even if they were out of it. Um, some of the keys that I have for the Nuggets is just play how you continue to play. You've been playing amazing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The bench just continues to stay hot with KCP, with Bruce Brown, with I mean, not necessarily their bench, but with Michael Porter Jr., with Aaron Gordon. And then I think that this is going to be one of those teams that's going to have a decent chance of attacking that Miami zone much better than the Celtics were able to. I
Mhm.
noticed there was a lot of Al Horford catching the ball right in the middle of the paint against that zone and kicking it out to a wide open player who would miss, or Miami was just so quick they could close out. But Jokic is not Al Horford. So Jokic can do a lot with that ball that Bam's really going to struggle with. So I think that those are some of the keys there, as well as the elevation differential. I'm curious to see how that's going to impact it as well. This is the most talented Nuggets team ever. So
Yeah. I think that just like you're saying, Jokic is the perfect guy to break this press. If he catches he can either take the ball up and they just have five guys in the perimeter, or he can just catch in the middle. And now he's distributing. He can go at Bam 1-on-1. You saw Hachimura guard Jokic a good amount in 1-on-ones for the Lakers, and you'd have like AD playing safety. I don't anticipate that's what the Heat will do. I think you'll see kind of different looks at Jokic, but in general, I kind of think Bam is going to be asked to kind of guard him 1-on-1, and then you're going to have all your perimeter guys stay at home, right? Can anyone guard Jamal Murray in a 1-on-1? Should they have to go man? Probably not. Like things like that is a little interesting to me. I wonder if Denver pulls a little bit deeper into their bench in this series. It's going to be, obviously they're well rested, so they might not need to. But they
right.
like last series basically just had a 7-man lineup playing 30 minutes each minimum. And I wonder if you see a little bit more like Peyton Watson, who can hit the three, he can play a little bit of defense. I think guys like Reggie Jackson probably can't get minutes in the series, but I wonder if they kind of pull a little bit deeper from the bench there. I think Denver is just way more talented than Miami, pretty honestly. But I'm gonna go the other way. I have Miami in 7 games.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right. So how
So
do the Heat win? How do the Heat win?
uh, I think this is weirdly a great matchup for the Heat. I think Denver has 7 games of rest, which is a good thing, but might hurt them in terms of coming off quick for game one and playing well. If Miami can steal game one, like now we're in business. I think in the last series, for example, I think Miami scored 108, had an offensive rating of 118, and Denver had an offensive rating of 124. To be honest, I think the Celtics defense is a lot better than the Nuggets defense. So maybe that's the 6 point gap right there. And the Lakers defense is a lot worse than the Celtics defense too. So I think the Lakers defense is a lot worse than the Heat defense. So I can see both Denver scoring a lot less and Miami scoring a lot more. I also think Miami just has 9 guys, like we're saying, to throw. They just have random adjustments they can do. Just see who's hot. And in those road games and elevation, maybe that also helps them because they can play fast. They don't play super slow. And we saw this like with their bench lineups in game 7. They're moving the ball. They're moving quickly. I think the matchups in general, the player matchups, I don't see who's guarding Jimmy Butler. Denver is going to go man. They're going to throw KCP at him. They're going to throw Bruce Brown at him, etc. I just think Jimmy Butler, we just saw him cook the Celtics. I don't really know how you can expect Denver to do better. And I think Denver should dig a little bit deeper into their bench, especially in this series, just try things out. And I don't think they will because they haven't done it all playoffs. While Eric Spoelstra is going to play 10 guys if he has to. For context, the seventh man on the Nuggets, Jeff Green, got basically the same amount of minutes as like the ninth man on the Heat, Cody Zeller, in their last series, respectively. So yeah, I kind of like the idea that Miami rides this matchup, and I think the zone can work still because the issue is like, is Jokic going to score 50 and have 20 assists against the Miami zone? Like, I would argue, like, I know AD is a better defender than Bam, but Bam's going to go one-on-one against Jokic. Like, I kind of like these matchups a lot better for Miami. I like this matchup. And also, I would argue Denver hasn't really played anyone that good. I don't want to roast the Lakers too much because that means my Warriors are really bad. But I didn't think the Lakers were that good. I didn't think the Suns were that good. And I kind of like Miami in 7. I know it's it's a ballsy take, obviously, but I just like I don't really see who's going to stop Gabe Vincent. Like, is Gabe Vincent going to score less with, you know, Jamal Murray guarding him than with Marcus Smart guarding him? Is Caleb Martin going to score less with, KCP guarding him than Jaylen Brown? I kind of like these matchups for Miami. And so I'm gonna pick them in 7. Sorry, that was really long.
I mean, that's fair, and your analysis is solid. I think honestly, it just comes down to the best player in the world is just way better than the best player on the Heat. Like, just unbelievably better. And that wasn't the case in the last series. Tatum, you might argue, is a better player, but obviously didn't play like it. And so I just think a lot of those things like you're talking about with Denver, part of their defense in a sneaky way is going to be how well they are, how good they are at scoring. Like, they're so good at scoring that it might just tire the Heat out. And also interesting point that you brought up is the Heat can play fast. They can also play slow, which could be helpful for them in Denver too.
Of course.
Another thing to think about with the Heat is that a recent report I was just looking at says that Tyler Hero is scheduled to come back for Game 3. Now, I think all of us can remember when Tyler Hero broke his hand and said he would be out until the finals, and people laughed and said, okay, well, that's it. He's done for the year. Not so fast. He might be back. So to your point, if they do pull out a game 1, and they split that first 2 games, and you've got Tyler Hero coming back to South Beach, oh, baby, we are cooking with some grease and some fire. I still think that the Nuggets are just going to get it done. I think both of these teams are absolutely excellent at late game execution. So I think these games are going to be intense. I think they're going to be super fun to watch. I'm super excited to see kind of how they go down. But I just do think that the amount of shot making that the Nuggets have is significantly more impressive than what the Celtics have been. Again, what the Celtics have been. Like, the Celtics, when they are on, they're on. As for guarding Jimmy Butler, I do think that there's going to have to be defense by committee. I do think Aaron Gordon's another guy you can kind of throw him in a pretty big offensive player. I think Michael Porter Jr. has been playing some of the better defense of his entire career now too. So I think they do have some options that they can kind of throw at them. I don't know the stats off the top of my head. You might have them, but it seems like their defense has been a little bit better recently during the playoffs. But to your credit as well, I think the Heat had a way tougher path to the finals than the Nuggets did. Whether that helps them, whether that hurts them, they played way more games than the Nuggets did. I don't know, did they? I don't know if they did, but they have their bodies are much more aware. Whether that helps and they kind of keep rolling, or whether it hurts them, remains yet to be seen. But I'm gonna still go with Nuggets in 6, but I do think that this is not nearly as big of a gap as many of the experts are saying.
Yeah, and I think all you're saying is fair. I also want to play devil's advocate myself. I can also argue the Celtics weren't that impressive going into this series either. Like, as much as I'm roasting the Lakers and the Suns, you can say the same about the Celtics. Aaron Gordon, I've been a non-believer of Aaron Gordon for the longest time. I complimented him a good amount after they won their series. I think he's kind of too big to guard Jimmy Butler. but we'll see because he's really beefy now. Like, to be honest, Aaron Gordon is like a power forward slash center body, which is kind of crazy. Like, dude is jacked.
Yeah.
But uh, like, let's say Aaron Gordon doesn't work and KCP doesn't work and Bruce Brown doesn't work. That's three guys that don't work in Jimmy Butler, and Jimmy Butler scoring 30. They don't have another guy to go to. Like, they don't have, unless they decide to use like Peyton Watson all of a sudden, or like, and that ends up working. But like, they don't really have a ton of options. When I feel like Miami, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like with Jokic on the court, you imagine Bam shadows all of Jokic's minutes. But on the other hand, you can also try out with Kevin Love at the five, and it's like, okay, Jokic, come score on us, but now we're going to do five out, and we're just going to score more threes, and you can score twos. And I think there's routes. I really think Spoelstra has a chance to, again, put on a coaching masterclass. I think Mike Malone's an amazing coach too. I'm sure he'll figure some stuff out too in this series. But I think there's really some good routes for Miami to win this series. I guess we'll have to see. And also going back to that thing I said about Cody Zeller, Cody Zeller was actually the 10th man, getting basically as many minutes last series as Jeff Green. Uh,
Um,
which
oh,
obviously Jeff Green played less games, but
my brother told me a funny stat. He said that Tatum and Brown combined for fewer made threes in this series than Caleb Martin and Tyler Hero combined.
yeah, it's true.
So, um, yeah. So I mean, it's going to be wild. I mean, Miami has definitely flipped the switch. This is not the regular season Miami Heat. If it were the regular season Miami Heat, this would be 5 or 4. But they flipped the switch. They're hitting threes at a clip we haven't seen. So,
And per 100 offensive possessions in their last series, Miami scored as many points playing against the Celtics as the Lakers did playing against Denver. So that kind of leads me again to believe that Miami's going to score more than they did last series on like per possession basis. Again, which is going to bring their kind of ratings closer in terms of how much they can score. I think, I was roasting Miami. I was like, I don't know how they can get to 130 points. With Tyler Hero coming back, Gabe Vincent's like doing better. I think there's routes against Denver. You can score 130 points with this Miami team. Against Boston, it's a little harder. But they did it against Boston too at the beginning of the game, at the beginning of the series. So yeah. I'm gonna roll with Miami in 7. We kind of gave you guys context, also listeners, of like how each team can win the series, I guess, with both of us taking the sides. But I will say, like, I think I'm gonna roll with Miami in 7, but Denver's probably gonna win this series. Like, yeah.
so what's your take?
My take is Miami's gonna win because
Okay. All right.
if you had like a gun to my head, I would pick Miami.
All right. Whoa, there it is, ladies and gentlemen.
Dude, I'm about to be so wrong. I'm about to be dead. You're the girl that have the gun to my head.
And I got the Nuggets, and I got the Nuggets in 6. So I don't know what's going to happen for this one.
Yeah. That said, some implications. If Jimmy Butler wins his first chip, he's now top 40. Because I've been thinking about this. His Jimmy Butler's peak kind of immediately becomes better than like CP3's peak, by a good amount.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as CP3's peak was longer, it's like Jimmy with 2 finals appearances in like three calendar years, 4 NBA years, and then like if he wins it, that's gonna be tough to argue. And then Jokic, if he wins a chip, he's top 30, top 40 with 2 MVPs.
If Jokic wins it, he might be top 20. Might be top 20.
It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough because I'm trying to think. The issue is we just haven't seen the rest of his career. He feel like had a career-ending injury. That's like the issue.
Right. Right.
That's kind of how I try to, like, if you had a career-ending injury tomorrow, how would we rank you? But I think, Jokic would probably be top 30, maybe top 20. A little crazy.
We'll definitely get into some good rankings of careers, best careers all time, that kind of thing. We have plenty of lists we've already made. We'll check them twice. We'll find out who's been naughty and nice, and we'll definitely do some rankings after this finals for sure.
Yes, sir. That's bars. Moving on. I feel like we talked about these teams a good amount. Nick Nurse is now the coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. Nick Nurse, Toronto's old coach, in his first year coaching, wins the chip with the Raptors in 2019. Kawhi Leonard obviously was the NBA Finals MVP. Since then, it's been a little bit up and down. They had a good season, then a bad season. They picked Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes rookie year, they're like pretty good, and then this year they missed the playoffs. So Nick Nurse leaves, and he pulls out of the Bucks coaching search at the last second. Now we find out it's because he probably had a deal with the 76ers. Anthony, any reactions? I thought this was great for the 76ers. I'm almost surprised Nick Nurse took the job.
Huge, 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 huge. I'm with you. Massive, massive upgrade for the Sixers. They no longer have a perennial choker as their leader. Nick Nurse finally has an extremely talented team. This is Joel Embiid is the most talented player I think that he's ever played with. I know he had Kawhi, obviously. This is going to be really fun. I think this is going to be some big roster shakeups too for the Sixers over the offseason with this new squad. I think they're going to really start having Tyrese Maxey come to the fold more as like a fully fledged all-star level player now with Embiid being that one guy and Maxey being their second. I think it's huge. I think it's huge for their mentality too, for their mental toughness. That was the big difference that I thought was between them and the Celtics, besides the talent gap as well. But I love this move. I'm a huge fan of this move. I don't like the Sixers, but I like the moves that they made, and it was great to move off of Doc. So this is really big.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting hire stylistically. Nick Nurse likes to play his starters all the time and likes to play them into the ground, to be honest. But the teams he's coached has never been super ball movement centric. It's a lot of matchup attacking, switches, a lot more defensive stuff, which I think is going to translate well, to be honest. It's not like with James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid, you're going to be throwing the ball around with some crazy ball movement, to be honest. That's not the type of players you have. If I was James Harden, I'd get out of there. James Harden, because Nick Nurse is not going to be afraid to bench you or play you less or run the offense through someone else. But if I'm James Harden, if I can get the same amount of money in Houston, I might just do that. But also, if I'm James Harden, if I listen to Nick Nurse, I got a lot better chance of winning the chip than if I just listened to Doc, which he might have also just been listening to Doc because Doc's not a great coach. If I don't know what the Raptors are doing, I think they just lost their lead assistant, Adrian Griffin, to the Bucks, and then now they lose Nick Nurse.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's a great segue. Any other points on Nick Nurse before we hop over to Griffin? No, yeah, I'm with you. Big fold for the Raptors on both these guys, and maybe a downgrade for Nick Nurse himself too. But we'll see where this goes.
I'm sure he got a bag. I'm sure he got a bag from the Sixers. That's the thing.
Is that contract out yet?
Not yet. I wonder. I'm sure it's probably the record though. I'm pretty sure it'll be the record-setting contract. Probably like 20 mil a year, something insane like that. I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can absolutely imagine. Yeah.
Especially because he just had all the leverage in the world where he literally could pick any job and then just go to the other jobs and be like, pay me more. I think great job by Nick Nurse, get your bag. But Adrian Griffin's also gone. And I heard reports on Masai Ujiri. People are trying to pick off Masai Ujiri from the Raptors situation. I don't know. It's going to be weird. I could almost see the Raptors blowing it up completely. I could see Siakam, Van Fleet, because Van Fleet's a unrestricted free agent. So I could see Siakam get traded. Just Scottie Barnes, here's the team. Let's see how you do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe try to do that Portland pick if they can try to do some sort of package with that.
That's a great call. If you can get Siakam, if you throw like Siakam and even if you got to do Anunoby too, if you can get that third overall pick, dude.
And you get maybe a Simons back too if you're trying to trade some youth as well.
And they like those type of players too, because they had Norman Powell before, and now they have Gary Trent, who I think is also free agent. I could be wrong. But yeah, interesting stuff.
Very interesting. And as for I didn't know too much about Adrian Griffin, but I do know that he was also part of that same roster. He has that championship mentality. This is his first ever head coaching, or
yes, and he's actually, if I remember correctly, he was a the Bucks coach, assistant coach back in like 2010, 2011 too, which is
Yeah.
kind of funny.
So he's staying in the North.
Yeah.
He's having a good time, and I think it'll be helpful to see where the shakeup goes. I'm not too familiar with his coaching style, how he runs plays, so it'll be
Yeah,
cool
me
to kind of
neither.
see what switches. At the end of the day, I feel like I'm gonna have to reserve my judgment a little bit on that call. I don't I like it. Just kind of have to see what they do with the rest of the roster.
Yeah, in general, I never hate the idea of going into a successful coaching situation and stealing an assistant coach like Mike Brown. A good example there. Most Spurs guys like Budenholzer, if I remember correctly, is a uh, Greg Popovich guy. So in general, I never hate doing that. So I think it's a from a not too professional perspective, I think it's a pretty good idea.
Yeah,
That they signed him. Also, Giannis gave his seal of approval on it, is what the
yeah,
reports were.
that's huge.
Last super topical thing that I wanted to talk about is relevant to my favorite team is Bob Myers, our president of basketball ops and the general manager of the Warriors, stepped down. He announced at a press conference yesterday, a joint press conference with the owner Joe Lacob, and it kind of looks like the assistant GM is going to step in and be the new GM. For context, Bob Myers took over as GM back in 2013. In his first month, he drafts Harrison Barnes, Draymond Green, Festus Zealey, and like less than a year later, trades for Iguodala. Really, he kind of took that core of Steph and Clay that had been created from kind of the Jerry West era of admin, and he really kind of promoted it and excelled it. He also is the one who fired Mark Jackson for Steve Kerr. Amazing decision somehow, like he pulled it off. He's always had a great relationship with the players, specifically Draymond, and I'm very sad that he's going to leave. I'm a little bit worried. It really lowers my confidence in how good I think the Warriors can be. I still think they can be very good, but yeah, we'll see.
I think that they have definitely set in the DNA of a great organization, and I think that will definitely help them. I think a few other notes. Obviously, within 2014, they also picked up Sean Livingston, which was a huge piece for your event.
Most
I mean,
Spates.
yeah, Mo Space,
Yeah. Yeah.
Barbosa, like so many great players. And then more later, Kevon Looney, obviously 2016 with the free agent signing of the century with KD, and then even drafting Jordan Poole, getting some of these young guys who haven't necessarily panned out amazingly, but even still an amazing tenure with the Warriors. And it's going to be tough. You had brought this up before the pod when Draymond Green was just so frustrated after a call, and Bob Myers kind of went to him to the side and said,
In the
"Hey, it's
Kings,
okay."
yeah, in the Kings series, after he got ejected and he was yelling at the fans, Bob Myers came down and was like, "Yo, like, just get out." It's like get
Yeah,
out of,
it's
or
okay.
I think it might have been after a tech, maybe not after an injection, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah. That it, yeah, it's pretty sad. Apparently he turned down an ownership stake in the Warriors, um, which means he really apparently he just wants to take a year off, chill out, and then go from there. Yeah, go ham. He's probably gonna chill out, like go be an exec
Yeah,
at some Fortune 500 company and make a bag. To be honest,
yeah.
he's a former agent too. That's another side of that. And he's former forward at UCLA in college, if I remember correctly, which is kind of funny. So yeah, shout out Bob Myers, architect of the Warriors dynasty.
Shout out,
Sad
man.
day, yeah, sad day here over at the OJ household.
Well deserved. Well deserved.
Yeah,
He'll get a round of applause every time he goes to a game.
absolutely. And last thing in the press conference, I will say like something that I did enjoy. So like I roast the ownership of the Warriors a lot. I think sometimes they make bad moves and sometimes they limit cash to pay when I think they should just have a blank check. They're making $1 billion a year as an organization. But Joe Lacob, obviously, the new CBA came out. This is the first time my owner has really spoken to the public since the new CBA, which is really against the Warriors. And he basically was like, listen up, we're gonna win, we're gonna spend money, and it doesn't matter. And I was like, lit. Like, because to be honest, it's all you want to hear from your owner. Like you don't want to hear that he's I know he's meddling a little bit in the front office, which I don't love and stuff like that, but that's always like exactly what you want to hear. So yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's man, testament to the franchise. They're an awesome franchise, and I think they'll keep it going in some level. I have a lot of faith and trust in this organization.
Yeah, I just think with the money that we spend, we'll never be totally irrelevant, especially while Steph Curry's around. Also, Joe Lacob, former minority owner in the Boston Celtics, which is fun.
Trade
Finally,
us Draymond. Trade us Draymond.
bet that Jalen for Draymond trade is gonna hit like crack. Oh my God.
Man, maybe not Jalen, but trade us Draymond. Trade us Draymond.
Oh, also big shout out to big influence over this season, Boston Celtics legend, um, locker room presence. Danilo Gallinari retired today.
Did he really retire?
He did. He did.
Retired? Ah, oh, man.
Now you can't trade a salary. Fuck. You can't
Golly.
trade a salary in the offseason now. That sucks.
He wouldn't have made a difference for us anyways.
Yeah,
Golly.
exactly.
We had bigger problems.
Okay, finally, Anthony and I just want to end this topic on end this podcast on the topic of ratings in the NBA. So obviously the new CBA was signed and a new TV deal is going to be signed at the end of this calendar year, I believe. It might not be at the end of this NBA year, but at the end of this calendar year. Effectively, kind of the discussion is Anthony's kind of came to me. He's like, "Oh, finals or ratings are a horrible way of grading the NBA and how successful they do in terms of viewership," which I completely agree with, pretty much. Anthony, do you have any thoughts specifically? I can go into what I think about it. Yeah, I'll give you a second.
So I was inspired by a graphic that was showing NBA ratings based off of like LeBron's tenures in different places. Obviously, I think they went up a little bit when he first got to the Heat, and then they went up, spiked a little bit up again when he first got back to the Cavs, and then have kind of dwindled. And I believe that the insinuation was that for whatever reason the game has been like watered down or whatever. But the number of people that I know that pretty much exclusively watch the NBA by using Reddit streams, illegal streaming. Maybe you're at a bar with some friends. There are so many different ways to watch the NBA nowadays that just did not exist before. And so there needs to be a different way to, and I think you might touch on this in a second, there needs to be a different way to sort of be able to quantify the popularity of the league, because by no way, shape, or form is the NBA losing popularity just because the viewership ratings are quote unquote down or whatever the case may be. Obviously, I think more people would have tuned in for Celtics Lakers if both teams had made the finals or whatever. But at the same time, it speaks to a bigger issue that has to do with the NBA and ESPN and the other TV networks not being able to kind of wrangle in these illegal streaming websites, to be honest with you. Not to mention, again, the fact that like I was in Boston for game 7. There were bars and bars and bars packed with hundreds and hundreds of people watching 7, 8, 9 big screens. Like what can we expect? Of course, the actual number of fans watching these games is huge. And then not to mention, you might lead into this too, curious what your take is, but like social media through the NBA is just absolutely massive.
Yeah, so that's going to be my biggest argument. Illegal streams and whatnot. I have no idea what the number. Like, we personally know
Yeah.
a ton of people who watch it, but like, I feel like no one over 25 or 30 is watching stuff on illegal streams. So I
Right.
just struggle to quantify necessarily. There's also just like cord cutting in general. And also if why watch the game live when Bleacher Report is going to have a full condensed game video of it on YouTube 2 minutes after the game, right? Like stuff like that. I think those are all elements, but to me, the biggest element is just like social media, right? I think that's a way bigger indicator of the NBA success across all social media platforms. The NBA is by far the most interacted with, the most involved social media sport there is. And I think something that really helps the NBA is just the constant drama, the stars. You know the stars personally, you feel like you know them personally, even though you don't, to be honest, but like you feel like you know them personally. There's less players to pay attention to. It's a pretty interactive sport, but also come the off season, players are moving. Kawhi's going to the Clippers. KD is going to the Warriors, right? So there's more intrigue there. I also want to just bring up, I don't think the viewership has been really that bad when there's been a huge star. If there's been Steph or LeBron in the finals, the viewership has been amazing. Even last year, there was 14 million viewers for Game 6. That's more viewers than the 2006 finals had, which is arguably around the peak of cable television. So I think there's always context for this, in my opinion. LeBron, obviously, just in the 2010s, 2020, like everyone was watching. He made 8 straight finals. It's the biggest star in the sport. He's making finals. Everyone's going to watch. And then Steph, the next biggest star, whenever he was making finals, those ratings were up. And then when both of them were making finals, the ratings were popping, right? But even like Steph, the Warriors Raptors series, I believe Game 5s and Game 6 had like 19 million viewers, like something ridiculous like that. It's not limited to LeBron. Whenever there's a big star, and we'll see whoever's coming up next, and I don't think Jokic or Jimmy Butler are necessarily big enough stars to attract that much viewership. But I think it's fine. I think it's fine, and the social media interactions are like as high as ever. 32 billion social media interactions for the NBA as a whole last year. So it's like I don't know. I'm not tweaking. And Adam Silver has also talked about this in like press conferences. Also, like they really use social media as the bigger metric than viewership. ESPN is going to still be down to get the TV rights for your game if they know that the scoreboard that says ESPN at the bottom is getting shared by 100 million people every night. Whether it's on House of Highlights or on actual TV. Anyways, I think the NBA is in a great spot, and I think the TV deal is going to be by far the biggest TV deal they've ever had. They're going to get a bag.
It's going to be a huge deal. It's going to be a massive deal. Folks who didn't know Jimmy Butler before, you're about to get to know him now. Folks who didn't know Jokic before because they happen to play in the time zone with the fewest number of people that live in the United States, y'all are really about to get to know this guy now. He's not on a lot of national TV games. And he's going to be on a ton next season, especially if what I think is going to happen is he becomes finals MVP. I think the number of plays he's going to have, I could see the series slowly going tick, tick, tick. More and more people finding out, oh, who's this Jokic guy? It's going to be incredible. The league is in a fantastic spot. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also we saw like the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, like the Warriors Kings and then the Warriors Lakers back to back, were setting all the first round records since the turn of the century, right? So I know like maybe the finals, like if there's Jokic and Jimmy this finals, I know like there'll probably be less viewers of this finals than there was last year. But there might be more overall playoff viewers this year. I don't know those stats, but I think it's possible. So that's kind of my take there. I think the NBA is an amazing spot, to be honest, especially the viewership is young. So you're hitting a younger target audience that's going to get older and kind of continue to watch the sport. Great spot. They're going to get a bag. Then the cap is going to spike. These players are going to get crazy contracts. You're going to see an $80 million contract, like over 1 year at least, like by the year 2030. So get ready for that.
Yeah, absolutely. My last point of the whole ratings and just like viewership model is I think about baseball. 162 games, tons and tons of new guys coming in and out every single year. So many new all-stars every single year. So many players on every single team. They're doing a great job speeding the game up, but it's a little difficult to maintain popularity. I mean, many people would argue Mike Trout is or was the greatest player in the league for the last 10 years. He could walk into a grocery store. You wouldn't know who he was for the most part, unless you're a relative baseball fan. Hockey, same number of games as the NBA. Really, really fast pace. A lot of people really prefer that. But it doesn't help that you're wearing a helmet. It's great. They should obviously wear that protective clothing and stuff, but they're not being promoted in the same way that these NBA players are. And then finally with football is always going to be king in terms of total viewership. It's all about the team. In the US, of course, not international.
I just wanted to
Real football, soccer is different. We're talking internet. We're talking national here, but even for football, I mean, unless you're a quarterback or a great wide receiver, you tend not to really get that same press that you do as a guy where you see a Zach LaVine and Zion Williamson in a Sprite commercial. I'm trying to think of who the 45th and the 32nd best player in the NFL, they're not getting on TV for some sort of contract, for some sort of national televised deal. And to your point, many people who are watching the NBA on these streams are 25 and under. You don't have the 40-year-old who's watching on stream. Why would you? If you're watching something on a stream when you're 40, figure your life out. But for these guys that are younger, how many fans of the NBA are aged 10 through 25?
The majority, I'm sure the majority of NBA fans are under the age of like 28, like if you went by percentage, to be honest.
Ooh, I'd be interested to see some sort of chart about that.
Yeah.
But it's spiking and it's international. And so, of course, people aren't going to be able to watch it on TV the same way they can watch.
And I think that's a great point too. It's international. The 4 of the 5 best players in the league right now are non-American, you can argue.
Yep.
And something you saw in baseball, for example, during the World Baseball Classic this year, all baseball social media interactions were up. There was popping YouTube videos with baseball were like doing incredible. I remember there was a walk-off hit in the World Baseball Classic, and there was like a walk-off at some point in the playoffs last year. And the playoff video had been up for 6 months and had as many views as the walk-off hit in the World Baseball Classic did in like 4 hours. Right. So it's like the World Baseball Classic is just like way bigger of an event than like regular baseball, to be honest. But the NBA doesn't really have that equivalent. Like the NBA is the bigger event. So it also has the opportunity to bring in all these international viewers, which I think is awesome. It's very, very exciting. And eventually, I think we'll see international comps get a little bit more competitive and whatnot. The NBA is in a great spot again. Internationally, it's popping. And it's like a part of the culture. It's way more, basketball is part of like pop culture way more. Like you don't see a Jenner doesn't go out and date a baseball player,
Right. Yeah.
Not that I care, but not that that's like a good metric. Not that that's good analysis, but like, just like in terms of cultural relevancy. With that, I think we kind of touched on everything we want to talk about. Enjoyed the NBA finals. I'm gonna be enjoying it. Hopefully we'll have a podcast, another one out for you guys Friday after game 2, or Friday before game 2, or like Saturday after game 2. We'll see. But yeah, I got Miami in 7, and Boney has got
Nuggets in 6, baby. Nuggets in 6, and that's being generous. I think this is gonna be. I think this is going to be brute versus just pure skill. I'm excited to see what Jokic can do. I've bought into him being the best player in the world, and I think we're in for a show. No matter what happens, this is an easy series to root for, regardless of who wins.
Well, and I think there's a pretty good chance, like even if Miami wins in 7, Jokic probably still the best player in the world. We'll have to see. But yeah, I think that's all I got.
All right. Well, until then, folks, just sit back, listen to this podcast, enjoy yourself, drink a beer. And until then, we'll see you next time. We'll be Spittin Hoops, baby.
Y'all be easy now.
Peace. Okay.